Let's learn how to bounce back from the guys who have been bouncing back every day, every night,
Every minute. Yeah.
every minute. Right now, when I'm talking, it is 55. It is minus 55 in some places, minus 30 in some places,
Yes.
minus 15 in some places. And our soldiers are with us, bouncing back every day. So, with that, let me invite the mesmerizing mentor, guy who has always led from the front, the guy who I don't know what is his age, by the way.
I won't be telling you that.
Every time I look at him, he
Age,
sounds like he's in 40s.
age has got nothing to do with what you are, I think, and that everyone should be like that. Sunita talked about self-love, and I believe in that greatly, and I've written a book on self-love. So I think that is a beginning. So thank you, Kaushik. Thank you, everyone. You
Over to
being
you,
here
Varunji.
today
Over to you. Over to you.
On Sunday. So I'm going to talk about military leadership, but what we've learned in the first session from Kaushik, I think that was really important and the beginning and the foundation of leadership. That's what I believe. Mindfulness is something that a leader, whether he's in military or in a corporate world or a political leader, unless he is mindful, he cannot be a true leader. So the first and foremost lesson is that mindfulness is the essence of true leadership and building yourself to be a true leader. You know, when we, I hope any one of you, do you have any experience of army leadership or your relative or anyone who's in army who's told you about what army leadership is all about? I mean, what do you think about when you talk of leadership in army? What is that first thing which comes into your mind?
Discipline, sir.
Pardon?
Discipline.
Okay.
I have had the privilege of working with Indian ex-army men movement, IESM,
Okay.
and there I learned that it's all about the land before me,
Okay.
then my regiment before me,
Yeah.
and ultimately kuch bachta hai to then it is for me.
It is for me.
So that attitude is what you know, it is for the land first, the the army people first, and then if anything is left, then it's for me.
Then it
So that is what is that commitment, that consistency to move even in the most difficult terrains without begrudging it ki why did I choose it, or was I forced into it. So that is what is I have learned from the army people.
Thank you. That was, I think, you hit the nail on the head.
Arunji, it's basically service before self or nation before self. Because my husband is a naval officer. My brother-in-law is in the army. He's a lieutenant colonel. My husband is a commander.
That's great.
So yeah, I see it every day in my house. It's like 24/7/12 they work.
Absolutely. We pick up a 18-year-old boy from the school, and we create such a change in him over a period of time, even a short period of time, that he I mean, when I was in my school and college, I knew nothing about leadership. I knew I had a passion to go into army, because in our time it was either army, doctor, or engineer. There were three things that which was very common. So naturally, I being from the hills, we almost every family has a person in the army. So I also decided to go that. But you see, when a person who's totally raw, we convert him into a person who's ready to give his life. Uh, when we talk of nation, well, nation is a too big thing, I think. We people who are little higher in the hierarchy of leadership do understand uh, what the leadership is, what the nation wants. But the person who's there at a sipai level, he's fighting for his unit, he's fighting for his commander, He is fighting for his commanding officer. For him, I was in Pulwama before Kargil War, 99. I was there for 2 years. So my people used to say, they say, for us, you are the God. Because you take us to the encounters. The first encounter my boys faced, I was there with them. And they faced for the first time the bullet flying on the head. And I told them, I said, okay, you have to move ahead. You have to go into the bullets and see the militant where he is riding. So I shouted at 2-3 people, they won't be moving, because naturally, everyone is scared of death. And this was their first experience of live bullet flying over the head. So what happened that, when no one was moving, so what I did, I suddenly moved ahead into the bullets. They were flying over my head. And within 10 seconds, there were 5-6 people came from all over the sides, and they surrounded me. He says, please, how can you go into the bullets? I mean, just a small spark that you lead from the front. The army and the military produces leaders, not the bosses. In fact, in my presentation, I have a slide kept who's a boss and who's a leader. But that is the difference between the corporate leadership and the army leadership, because we have to motivate people. And after that incident, that was our first encounter with the militants. After that, I never had a problem. People would never let me go into the fight. I mean, I used to be there, right there, but they used to catch hold of me if I was moving like that. And they say, sir, please, you go back. We'll be in the front. So a time comes when leader is told, okay, we want you for more important things. We're going to come in front of you. No, that is the way, true essence of leadership. I think when you can motivate people to become a leader. We produce so many leaders in day-to-day life that everyone wants to lead you. Even he wants to come in front of you. Sir, you be behind. I'll be taking care of the front part. So that is all about. We've heard about many. I'm sure. Have you heard about military leaderships of World Wars, Second World War, and after that? I mean, First World War was, I think, quite old. But do you remember any name of good leaders, if you have heard? You must have heard. There was MacArthur, there was Rommel, the famous. We had Pattons.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have Eisenhower.
Manekshaw in India.
Manekshaw, of course, that was that would have been my next question. That who's the greatest military leader that India has produced so far?
Sir, one more person. I personally feel his name should be there. Subhash Chandra Bose from Kolkata.
Absolutely. See, there are Gandhiji, of course. There is Subhash Chandra Bose.
But Gandhiji and Subhash Chandra Bose completely different. I personally feel as a leader.
The problem is, we all know Subhash Chandra Bose. We all know quite a bit about him, but we don't know everything about him because of political compulsions maybe at places. So for us, he has a special place in our heart, I think, in India. But still, I don't know why, for what reason he was not given that kind of stature which should be given to him. But post-independence, if we see, I think Field Marshal Manekshaw has been the most outstanding. I was to narrate his story a little later, but I'll tell you right now since his name came there. Before 71 war, he was called in the month of July, I think, or June, and by then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. And he was one-to-one with the Prime Minister. There was a defense minister. He says, ma'am, I want to have one-to-one word with you. head of the military force talking to the prime minister like that, you really need guts. So the defense minister was sent out. So he says, ma'am, yes, what do you now tell me? What do you want to? She said, I want you to go with war with Pakistan because they are creating problems every day on the border. He says, when? He says, in next 30 days. So, in very point blank, if there was, I'm sorry to say, but if there was a leader who presently we have, uh, they wouldn't have said, okay, we'll go. But he was a person who would not, he had so much high regard for his own people that he said, sorry, I don't want to put my army into trouble. And the aim for which we're going to be in the war will not be achieved now. So he says, I refuse to obey your orders to go into war. But that doesn't mean I will not go into war. I need 90 days. And here is, in writing, I'm giving you that we'll win this war. We'll win hands down. If we don't win, I'm not going to come back from the battle zone. So those were the kind of leaders I think we should have, who have commitment, who have vision, who can look after their men. Looking after men doesn't mean that you keep putting them at a comfortable place or something. Looking after means they have to be trained well. If they are trained well, they can be, you can save them in the war. So that is about the little background. And why do we look for the military leadership? Because military leadership, we built this leadership over a period of time. We graduate from a lower level to a higher level. Every level, every day is a learning from our leaders, which I think you will not find in a corporate world. So when we talk of military leadership, I'll just, what I'll do, I'll explain you what is the situation, as you all know it. But I just want to tell you, just want to build as to how, what is the kind of situation globally we have, and how has this 2020 been. We thought at one point of time that COVID has gone. But again, if you see the European countries, the US, and many other countries, they're facing a lockdown again. So where the economy had taken the back seat, we had gone into -4% economy. There is, IMF has predicted that in 2021, we may have the bounce back, and we may achieve +4, from -4 to +4. But this bouncing back, every one of us has to work together. Why this problem is there? What is the scenario, global scenario? As you know, we've not entered only to 2021. We've entered into a new decade. Now, this decade, if we see the past decade, what challenges we had, what negatives we had, what positives we had, and what are we going to carry to this decade, we'll see what are the pluses and what are the minuses. So I'm just going to share my presentation with you. I think Kaushik has had enough activity, so I'm going to tell you the crux of leadership and military leadership, and what kind of situation we have at present. So bouncing back by learning from military leadership, but I'll talk to you about global outlook, though you all know it, but I have collected some data, some points as I thought would be better if you know that before we go into military leadership. Then as such, what military leadership is all about, and how can we use that and reset and restart once again. Now, let's start with something positive why we should not hate 2020. You know, a leader has to be positive. When I come towards the end, I'll tell you that a positivity, like Kaushik said, that in mindfulness we teach you that positivity will create positiveness. And if you have a negative feeling, you will always see the end result would be negative. So let's see what have we learned from 2020, which we can carry forward to 21. And can anyone please unmute yourself? You can just give your experience because we are learning from each other. What did you like that one best thing about 2020?
Family came together. There was a word.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That there was a word which everyone used to say, कि वक्त नहीं है, I'm busy. So nature taught us that this word busy or वक्त नहीं है is something which we have in our own mind. It's actually
Absolutely. Anyone who has experienced something great which you couldn't do for many years? Yeah, Manali.
Yes. So it was like ma'am said, कि वक्त नहीं है, वक्त है, but in 2020 we realized what exactly we want to do.
Yes.
Yes. Because there was time we did not have time to think that what exactly I want in my life.
See, your mind was totally blocked with
occupied.
In fact, I would say blocked. It was not occupied is something which happens in reality, but you take things on you and you say you are very busy. You know, first day of lockdown, when there was nothing to do. So, I mean, it was like a traumatic time, morning till evening. Well, okay, one day you can relax, but what about the next day? The restrictions were that you would not go out also. So one would just go down the tower and take a little chakkar of that your own tower where you're staying, and then again come back. So what I did, I suddenly thought that what was that one thing which I used to do during childhood, sitting at a home. So I realized that I used to do a little bit of sketching. So I didn't have a drawing sheet or something. I picked up a A4 paper, picked up a pencil from somewhere, and started drawing. And you know, every day I did one sketch for next 60 days. I have 60 sketches with me, and every day there was an improvement. And it gave me so much of satisfaction. The book I was thinking of writing for last year and a half, I finished it and it came out 10 days back on self-love. So, I mean, for me, this year has been very, very positive. We'll not talk of negative because we all know what negativity people have. They have lost jobs. People have lost their nears and dears. They've suffered physically, mentally, financially, everything they have suffered. But in that is where resilience comes. You see, a leader who can take you out from these difficult times is a true leader. He is the one who's resilient. He's the one who knows how to bounce back. So I just put this thing together. The whole world took a pause. We all know for few days there was nothing. The family culture was brought back. We learned to live within the limited resources. There was time to go back to your hobbies, interests. We became more creative. You know, the best thing was that nature was its best. We would see the sparrows which we had not seen for years together. We see the kind of weather which was not there for years together. People became a little more compassionate. They were empathetic. The help started coming out. People realized the value of mental health because, you know, you were to change your mindset. The whole thing got changed, in fact. In the morning, we used to get dressed, go to office, come back. The whole day we used to pass like that. But it became almost standstill. We learned to be adaptive to the kind of situations that came our way. And I think we all have grown and matured to another level with this pandemic, the kind of challenges we faced. We've learned some lessons from that, and this was about life, work, and togetherness. Togetherness means whole family came together. We learned a true meaning of life. many families, many couples who had problems, they had time to think over and came back again reunited. There were many things which happened during these times. So the lessons are, we should never take things for the granted. And another lesson was that the people who think ahead, plan ahead, it took a couple of days for some offices to close down the main office and come to the virtual mode. It didn't take much time, because maybe some of them had thought of that kind of scenario. So you're looking after yourself. Your self-care also is very important. That's what it has taught us. Staying connected with your family. We need to find happiness in small little things. Action matters more than a word. If you're going too fast in life, you need to take a pause. Now, this pause thing is such a great thing that whenever, life, I think, for everyone was going very fast. It was literally going very fast. So the nature told you to take a pause. To take a pause, and then you have to restart. When you take a pause and restart, I think you are at your best. You need to break that monotony. And you never stop learning. They were learning from new things. Now, how would the next decade look like? Just a quick perspective of that. By 2030, there's going to be a billion people more. So in the whole world, the population would be added by a billion more people. So you need more work, you need employment, you need education. Asia would be an emerging economy, so there'll be a lot of opportunities. In spite of these challenges at this time, China and India, China would be the number one in 2028, and India could come to number two. So we all leaders need to take this perspective into our mind. There'll be effect on a climate change. The refugee problems are there all over the world. Fresh water is a problem. We have threat of new viruses, new diseases. Terrorism is increasing. We have religious, ethnic, and racial conflict. So healthcare cost would increase. I mean, that's the generally what is the global outlook for next about 10 years. We are doing well. We increased. There are more schools. People who stay in Delhi would see what kind of schools have been created here, even the government schools. There is a greater connectivity, globalization. The life expectancy has increased. Wars are less, but happiness we need to find ourselves is not there. So this is all about a little about what the global outlook looks like. So let's come on the main subject, which is the military leadership. Now, in army or in any army, navy, air force, or wherever it is, I talk of a common military structure. We have three kind of leadership structure there. One is a direct leadership, which is the unit level, which are in direct contact with either, say, with the enemy, or they're deployed on the border, or they are deployed on the ground. And that is our units, teams, our task forces, which are generally on the ground. Then we have a organizational structures where we have our headquarters, the systems, supplies. We have leaders at every level. Right from the bottom, a smallest unit of army, we call it a section, which has about 10 people. And section also has various, like commander starts from that. A commander starts from 3 people. He's a detachment commander who has detachment of 3 people with him. So he becomes a commander. So from there he becomes one ahead. He has 10 people under him. Then he has 30 people under him. Then he has 100 people under him. Then there is a person who has 1,000 people under him. So we graduate to a level of, from direct leadership. Organizational means it's not only fighting. we are good at supplying, we are good at controlling people, we are good at providing assistance during natural calamities, floods, everything the army and military forces need to be prepared for. And then we have strategical leadership, which consists of heads who look after the global, national, and regional part. Just want to give you a little glimpse of what the army leadership and what army is all about. There is a small clipping. You have just got the perspective of what the military leadership looks like. And the last what you have read is we fight until last man, last round. Now that means that we need to accomplish mission even if there is a last man left and with him there is a last bullet. So he fights till then. So this is all about the what in generally we do in the army and how we prepare ourselves. Now, what we believe in is few things. One is a character, loyalty to the nation, army, and unit. Like I said, the loyalty starts with that, with your nation, with army, and then your unit. But the real royalty in army starts from actually the down below. The person has to be loyal to your commander. The person has to be loyal to your next commander, and person has to be then loyal ultimately to the country. Duty until death. We have. I'll just tell you how we are groomed in the factor of this death. duty until death. Respect to all, selfless service, honor the army values that we have. We have our own military law which binds us together. We're not supposed to be, there is act outside civil act, but we have army act, army rules by it's not, you don't find common in any other organization, but we do have, because we want discipline. We want people who are who are not mischievous or who don't create problems. So we have our own codes, we have our everything our own. Now, just I don't want actually to go into definition or something of leadership, but just can you hear me all? I think if there is a problem, please just bear with me, because the power may go off and I'll come on the other mode. When we talk of leadership, as I said, we, at least in Indian Army, we think about our own Sam Manakshaw. And I'll just give you a small incident, because I'm going to tell you one or two stories of leadership so that it goes into your mind as to what, how we can be a good leader. You know, after 71 war, which I was talking about, we won that war, and we have almost 1 lakh prisoners of war. And they were kept in various camps around the country. So Sam Manakshaw was chief of army staff. So one day he thought, why not to visit this camp? So he went to one camp of prisoners of war where Pakistanis were kept there. And after taking a round, he went to their cookhouse where the food was being prepared. So he said, can I taste the food? So he tasted that food, and he had along with him his ADC, whom he said, I want you to immediately tell the person who supplies them the ration and everything that their standard of their food has to be improved. They are not our enemies, they are our guests now, and it is our duty to look after them. And there was a Pakistani 6 feet tall junior commissioned officer hearing all this. And when Sam Manakshaw was leaving, so he came and he had tears in his eyes. So Sam Manakshaw said, he says, Saab, why are you crying? He says, I wish we had leaders like you. We wouldn't have been at this place today. We would have won the war. We had leaders who took care of themselves. They never bothered about us. And that is how 1 lakh of Pakistani army landed up here. Half of the Pakistan army was our prisoners during 71 war. So that was a kind of situation. That was a kind of leadership that was accepted by not only our own country, but the enemy countries accepting that your leaders are better. Naturally, they were better, so that is how they were called better. So what is about army leadership? Generally, these principles apply elsewhere also, that it is a process of inspiring and influencing others, your team. There needs to be, you have to provide them purpose, direction, and motivation. You can only provide, provided you yourself are very clear that what is your purpose, what is your goal, how you have to achieve it, and how can you achieve it. To accomplish the mission in all difficulties. Up to this, it applies to any sector of leadership, whether it is political leadership or industrial leadership or corporate leadership. So where is the difference? You have to accomplish your mission in the face of all difficulties until even your death. So that is how we start preparing people for that kind of thing. How do we prepare them? This is the oath taken by the cadets when they are commissioned into the army. I hereby, this you can just, this is a normal oath. I will bear true faith and allegiance to Constitution of India, and by law establish that I will, as in duty bound, honestly and faithfully serve in the regular army of Union of India, go wherever ordered by land, sea or air. If I am in the army, that doesn't mean that I'm only going to be on land. I can be ordered to go anywhere, and that I'll observe and obey all the commands of the President of Union of India. Why President? Because he is our supreme commander. And the commands of any officer set above me. Again, that factor, even to the perils of my life. Now, that is the kind of oath we give it right from the day one when the person joins the army, navy, or air force, any military forces. And this remains our motto. The safety, honor, and welfare of a country comes first, always and every time. The honor, welfare, and comfort of your men you command. That means the team you have in your word comes the next. Your own ease, comfort, and safety come last, always and every time. It is grilled into our mind. It is grilled so hard into our mind that we never forget even after retiring from army. Another story time I'll give you. Please, in case you have any question, you want to add on anything, please do unmute yourself. You can tell me anytime in between. You can stop me. There is no problem. We can take on that. Now, I'm going to give you a small incident as to how you can put a little spark in that leadership. I'll give you my own story, which like I said, we were deployed in Pulwama in 99. We were there from 97 to 99. And when we were about to move to a peace station, from there we went to Hyderabad. So we were looking forward to go to Hyderabad, stay with our families there. And suddenly this Kargil thing happened. And overnight we were told that you have to move to Kargil sector. And in army, when we move from place A to place B, we don't keep that kind of transport in a kitty. What we do, we hire civil transport. Like if you're moving at a longer distance, we go in a train. We use aircrafts if we're going overseas. And if we're going to a place which is not connected by train or air probably, then we take civil trucks. So I was given about 20 civil trucks to move from Pulwama to Kargil sector. We stayed overnight at one place, and then next day we were moving to the war zone area, where around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, we were stopped, our convoy was stopped. We had about 50 to 60 odd vehicles, including these 20, 25 trucks that we had, driven by most of the Punjabis and some other people. So at that point, we were stopped there because they said after this area, there are about 5 to 6 kilometers of the road which was under enemy observation. And if you go during daytime, they can see you and pinpoint fire on you. So we generally used to move after darkness, and darkness without our headlights of our vehicle. And remember, one side was a solid cliff, and other side was a deep gorge. And there was a very narrow, unmetalled road in those areas. Still, it is there like that. And so after dark, we started moving. And after about 10 minutes, the enemy started pounding his arty fire on us. And the first message I got on my wireless said that these trucks have stopped and all the drivers have gone under the truck. In fact, there was no way to turn back. So I walked about 200 to 300 yards, and I spoke to a few drivers who were there in the front. They said, if we move, we'll get killed. So we're not going to move. I said, but you can't go back also because the road is such that you have to move ahead. They were not ready to do that. So I said, okay, what I'll do, I will move in front of your truck, not in my Jeep, but I'll be moving, I'll be walking in front of you. So in case there is a shell, it will land on me, you'll still be in your vehicles. So finally they've agreed, okay, you move. So I started moving. I went few steps. There was a bomb fell little away. So the first reaction is that whenever a firing takes place or something like that, you lie down on the ground. So I lied on the ground. There were 2, 3 people with me walking on left and right. And again, after few minutes, I got up, just rubbed the dust away from my clothes, and I again started walking. There was again a bomb fell after about 5 minutes. And this happened 2 to 3 times. After that, all these trucks again stopped. I said, why? What has happened? You know, these drivers came to me with their folded hand. You please sit in your car. Now we are not scared of death. We will move because we have seen you and your people moving on foot in front of us in open against this shelling. We're not going to move. We're not going to stop. We'll move. Okay, we reached. That was not end of that. We reached at a particular place where we're supposed to go. And in the morning, we served a breakfast to them and they were all leaving. When they all leaving, they all came to me. And again, with their folded hands, those civilian drivers, sir, can we stay with you and fight alongside with you? We want to do something for our country. Now, that was, though it was not supposed to be there, I became so emotional that if I was not in a uniform, maybe few tears would have come down in my eyes. That small little action has motivated those civilians who have never seen a bullet in their life, who never faced a bullet in their life, to fight alongside with the army just for that one action which they saw the last night. So a leader has to be in the front always without bothering about his own life. Now, why do we follow leaders? It is not only in military, even in other sectors. It is like an iceberg, you know. What we can see is very little. So what we can see is that we have to follow a leader because by his position. So just because he's our leader, we happen to follow him or her. But ultimately, a true leader is what is written in the last line. When you start having confidence in your leader, when you start having respect in your leader. So how do you build that kind of respect in a leader? You start liking him when the leader really starts looking after you. He helps you in growing in life. When he helps you growing in life, you start achieving your small little goals. You have faith on leaders. You build little trust on him. That trust keeps increasing as your team starts delivering. When you are winning, even small little loss also gets hidden somewhere in between. So you start liking leader, you start building trust in him, you start building, and it's not a one day's effort. You know, when we have a permanent unit where we stay in our service for about 13 to 14 years. We joined this unit as a second lieutenant. Now it is a lieutenant, of course. And we command that unit as a full colonel and then we leave it. So we stay in that, we go out, come back to the same unit again. So we remain with them affiliated, and this trust and respect is not built over one day. In army also we follow the leaders just because we have to follow them. But ultimately we all work towards getting the respect and the trust of the lowest person who's here in a team, in a unit. So what are the elements which are unique in military leadership that we may not have at other places? One is that we never give orders which cannot be obeyed. But there's nothing impossible in our dictionary. You know, our troops are so simple, and they think that their leader, whatever is talking all sense. So even if you tell these people that tomorrow we're going to go to the moon, the first thing your troops are going to say, okay, sir, yes, sir, we are ready. I mean, they dare not question you, because that's the kind of faith and capability you have built in. If you tell them these kind of things, they'll be ready to go in war with you. They'll be ready to die for you. And that's the kind of relationship, that's the kind of respect we in the armed forces, we earn from our team down below who are with us. There's always element of death and sacrifice that we keep reminding people when we train them. When we train them during peacetime, it is written in our training areas that more you sweat during peacetime, the more blood you will be able to save during the war. We lead with actions and not words. We act because we have to lead them. So it is not the word by which we lead. We show them how to lead, how to do our work. It's not we make them do any work. We most of the time command unfamiliar troops. You know, like I said, we remain in one unit for a few years, but we go to other places also in between. And when we go to other places in your unit over a period of time, you earn the respect. You earn the trust of people. But wherever you go for 1 year, 1.5 years, or 2 years, you have to start all over again. And then you don't have that kind of time. You have to prove your worth in a very little time that you have. And earlier you do, the better tenure, the better time you're going to have for that next 1.5 or 2 years. Physical, mental, and emotional toughness. You know, we believe not only in physical, because if you are physically tough and if you are mentally not strong, you are emotionally not strong, you are not able to take balanced decisions. Where mindfulness comes is all about your mental and emotional toughness. All these three things have to be, like Kaushik said, your mind and body has to be in sync with each other. Your mind, your body, and your soul, your emotions, the way you think, everything has to be in sync with each other. Only then you will be able to make a balanced kind of decisions. And this is not only in military or any other, like not in a corporate only, even the leadership, like we say that leadership starts from the homes. Every homemaker, whether your spouse, would make certain decisions which are based on your emotions, which are based on your the way you think. So if you make better decisions for yourself, for your children, you are leading your children. You have a small team. That's also a team. You need to guide your children. You need to lead. You need to set personal example. That's why I say leadership starts at home. So these three things have to be in sync with each other. We do not perform on incentives. We don't have anything like we're going to get extra pay or something like that. We don't have that kind of thing. It's total one thing which is called as selflessness. That is, for that we work in the armed forces. We need to be ready with the backup to the backup to the backup plans. We rehearse all kind of contingencies during peacetime, because when we are there inside the battle zone, the bullets and shells flying over our top, that is not a time to think. That's time to act. And how will you act? You will act provided you have rehearsed during peacetime. You know, many of us, we say that this COVID situation no one would have imagined. But I don't agree with that. I am very sure the true leaders, people who had visions, people who read the history, they know that history is going to be repeated again. We have seen these kind of situations many years ago. So those people are ready for these kind of eventualities. That's why overnight the offices were shifted from physical to the virtual office, because someone had thought of that this can happen. Ability to learn from your failures. When we are failing, every one of us are taught history, military history especially, because in our all promotion exams we have one subject which is called as military history, because we go into very detail of the battles which were fought before, what mistakes leader committed, what good things they have done, and what is the lesson learned from those mistakes that they have, so that we don't commit those kind of mistakes. So if you go back to the history, like I said, the plague, the great disastrous kind of a plague which had taken place few years ago in European countries, the same kind of thing, the more countries are involved now in this pandemic. So people take lessons from the history and move forward. We listen, learn, and lead. There is no end to learning. We always keep learning. We keep creating good leaders. It is kind of a chain reaction. Like I said, we have leaders right from leading a team of 3 men right up to leading the complete army, or we have a CDS who's taking care of Indian Army and Air Force, all 3 things together. We never leave a fallen soldier behind in the hands of enemy. Now that is called as team spirit. So this was all about the leadership by the military. We produce leaders and not the bosses. So what the corporate world can learn from lessons from the military leadership. We have a quote which says that it's not the numerical and equipment superiority that matters, but man behind the equipment and the way he's led. You have best of equipments, you have best of environments, you have best of everything in an organization. But if you don't have well-trained men, if you don't have the best of leadership, is of no use. So that is one thing which the corporate world has to learn from the army. Leading from the front, whenever there is a problem, it's not that leader is supposed to be sitting behind and only ordering you to go here and there. He is supposed to be going into the problem area with you. Control and limit the situation. When something happens, like in a battle zone, we try to control and restrict the area of that battle and focus everything. The next point is concentrate of forces. We pick up that point and we concentrate all our forces there. You know why various zones were created during this pandemic? The government found that these are the certain pockets which were more affected by pandemic. So you have a selective lockdown, you have a restrictions for those particular areas. So in a leadership, you are supposed to be picking those crucial points and limit them. Don't go them beyond the limit. A true leader will always restrict a problem area. He will not let it expand and concentrate all his resources, all his focus on that area. Stay in the fight to win the battle. If you disengage from the battle, this is the situation we are discussing, COVID situation. So if you disengage from the fight of COVID, can we win over it? No, you have to be in that battle. That is how we're going to create the vaccine. We're going to test the vaccine. We want to bring back what we had seen in the before March, the kind of situation, we want to bring it back by being into the battle. Train your team hard during good times, create imaginary situations. A true leader is visionary. He thinks the most uncommon thing, which many people would say that, oh, this cannot happen. There's nothing, we have seen that there's nothing which cannot happen. Be decisive, lead with courage, and you need to be confident amongst your team. You know, if you are not confident, then probably, I mean, from physical side, if you are not look confident, your team will be disheartened and they'll be totally, I mean, you'll lose the battle before even starting it. You need to communicate very clearly what is in your mind. A leader who is not able to communicate properly, precisely what he wants, he'll never be successful in his life. And in army, that in military, we see that our orders are structured. When we give orders to troops, when we get orders from our higher headquarters, they are all structured. They are all to the point. What exactly is the mission? What is the task? We don't take whole day to discuss the task. It takes 10 seconds to discuss what is your task. The task is very clear that we have to capture this point by 2 o'clock in the morning. So it is very clear. So a leader needs to be a very precise and very clear what he wants to convey. He may have many things in his mind. How do you communicate well? Provided you know this art of communication. Again, I would say the mindfulness, being emotionally intelligent, two very great things which you need to have a power of communication. What you want to communicate? It's not that you have communicated what you wanted to do. You need to communicate what other people have to understand, that what exactly you are saying. So that is called as power of communication. You need to delegate to people. You know, there are many leaders who want to do everything themselves. They don't want to delegate. No, they are the ones who get into trouble. Because unless you start delegating right from the beginning, you will not be able to produce leaders. How can you create leaders to face challenges if you have not given them an opportunity to act in challenging time? That is what we do in a leadership. We create small teams in military, give them an independent job, that you go, you capture this bunker under this commander, the other one will capture this. So you create small tasks within that big task and give liberty to the commander so that tomorrow he can take your place when you leave. Again, physical, mental, and emotional toughness, working under stress. We work under, if someone says that we are trained to work under stress, it is not that easy. We do, I mean, the stress and trauma of war zone doesn't end within the war zone. It carries on thereafter. You know, there are many cases we have seen which people get traumatized after a particular battle. While they are in a battle, they just do a very good job. But after that, it becomes traumatic for them to live their life. Going into the past, what exactly has happened. So these are kind of some points I had, that which the corporate leaders can take from the military. How generally we make decisions. We consider our goal. We have an insight. We need to understand what values a particular organization has, and we need to be very clear what is expected out of us. You know, we since there is a hierarchy of leadership in everywhere, we need to understand what is that top leadership expects from us, and how we can create that kind of environment where the team can bring that thing into what exactly is required. What is the meaning of success for a team? We can keep celebrating our success, but it is not, if it is expected from our top leadership, then that's not a success. So you need to take a pause, you need to think, you need to listen to your sixth sense. We generally say that intuition, sixth sense is, the sixth sense doesn't come on its own. The people who will learn about mindfulness more will see that your sixth sense comes based on your past experiences. And if you better your experiences, you can better your sixth sense. There are many military leaders who purely on sixth sense achieved a lot of successes. And that happens. That happens in the battle because you have practiced for 10 contingencies and you will find the 11th one during the thick of the battle. So what do? You have neither rehearsed for that, nor you have practiced for that, nor your men have practiced. So, and you have a split of a second in taking that call. And you take that call based on your intuition. And most of the time, your intuition would be right if you have a positive frame of mind. If you want to win a battle, if you want to get out of that situation somehow, you may not be able to succeed. But if you want to win that battle, you go in with a positive frame of mind, your sixth sense will always take you to a great direction. Go big or go home. There are many companies who closed down. Apple closed down his stores all over the world because they knew that they need a pause. They need to think. There are many things which were created, thought with immediate effect, because they just wanted to think what is I mean, there is no point doing a thing where you keep opening a store where then there's no one there to buy it. What is the need of opening that? So it's better you close down for a while, think, reset, restart, and you can really come back with resilience and great ability. Now, how can we reset ourselves? Now, we've seen the leadership style, we've seen everything. The first thing is you need to take a pause. We need to think for whichever level you want to bounce back, whether you want to bounce back in your personal life or whether you want to bounce back in your professional life. You need to think, take a pause, sit down, see what 2020 has taught you, what lessons it has given you, and what kind of beliefs you are carrying forward to 2021 and this next decade. That 2021 is also beginning of the decade. The way we bounce back in this year will write what our next 9 years are going to be. This is really a crucial time where the whole world can either go back 8 to 10 years, or we can just wipe off these last 7 to 8, 9 months by just bouncing back with the double force. So you got to go into that belief. You got to make actions. What actions you're going to take? Only belief will not materialize into the outcome. You need to plan of action, plan A, plan B, plan C, for your life, for your personal, professional, any kind of life. You need to have focus, point of concentration. You cannot control the whole thing in one go. You can go in small chunks of pieces. So make your plan, make your beliefs, make your plan of action, and bring focus to those points which you immediately need to go with. And we've learned a new thing called as psychological safety, which is the safety at your workplace. Psychological safety means you give safety to your team. Your team should first feel secure. How can your team perform if they don't feel secure? You know, many people would have had a traumatic time. The people have lost their jobs. The salary was cut down. The health issues, parents staying with the people have health issues. The children are to be uh, attend to their classes online. The lady has to cook food, look after the home. I mean, you have to do everything in that one time, which when you were going out, there was no problem. But managing things from the virtual world is the most difficult thing that you can have. You can have psychological safety when the whole team is together at one place, sitting in an office, you can talk to them. But here, everyone is disintegrated. People are working from home. How will you create a sense of psychological safety for them? Give them a chance to express themselves, talk to them, tell them that you are very much part of the team. Bring, I mean, you need to make them comfortable. You need to give them something to feel safe and secure till the time we come out of this pandemic situation. So you need to identify what was not in your control during these 7, 8, 9 months. Reset ourselves because we need to be changed. There's a lot of things going to be changed in coming days. So you need to be a change agent. You need to reset your work, create values, attitudes. You may have to change your attitude. You may have to change your behavior. You need to reevaluate everything, that what does success means to you. And when we talk of success, we should not look at what we are going to achieve in the whole year. Like Kaushik said, go week by week. Break into small little pieces and enjoy and each and every part of the success that you achieve in that. Basically, this is just wanted to convey to you that how these three phases would look like. You know, we have responded to this situation very well. Now, all these three phases, respond, recover, and renew, are overlapping with each other. At some point of time, we are still responding. The responding part has not ended. This orange line would end the moment we start getting vaccinated. And we are very confident about ourselves that, okay, now we are safe from this disease. Then probably you will go into your recovery stage, and then there'll be a renewal. Now, respond was like, you know, a patient comes to a hospital, he's bleeding. So what is the first thing that a doctor does? He stops his bleeding, because that is the most critical thing. So what we did in a respond, we contained those areas by making containment zones. That's the kind of leadership we require, that how to reset and people would have thought of that. So you stop the bleeding, so you know the patient is little better now. So you put him into a recovery stage by going into the second stage, whether you have to operate him, whether you have to put him on medication. So once he finishes with that, once he recovers, he starts renewing. He starts again building his health by taking control of his diet, taking control of his physical, mental, emotional health. So this is the kind of reset we also need to plan for ourselves. And we need to understand how we can lead in a new normal. We need to create a kind of trust, transparency, which is very important. Compassion, empathy, I think there is nothing that can go without being compassionate and empathetic. You need to be mentally very, very tough. Whatever, people would have had stress, people would have had anxiety. There are many people I have met personally. I have met so many of them who said that we are really angry, we lost our job. People in hospitality industry, people in airlines, hotels, everything is basically stopped. Tourism, imagine that kind of, they were guides, they were earning from the daily sightseeing people. I mean, there were a lot of things which, if we sit down, we see we are so lucky that we've been sailed through this 2020 in a fairly comfortable thing. But there are many people who have suffered a lot, and we need to think about that. We need to think about the community, the greater purpose. We have to be together. The kind of way we looked after our people during the last 3-4 months when there was a lockdown. I think everyone, 90% of us, we gave our maid full pay. The washerman used to come, he never used to come, so we made payment to them. The children who were not able to get for their studies, we did that. I was part of an NGO, we did a lot for these people. So there was a sense of community, there was a sense of purpose in all of us, and that is how the leadership goes all about. We need to look after ourselves. We need to be, at times a leader has to break rules to get into a mode which is not written anywhere. The rules are made because of certain experiences. So we need to break those rules and get into a mode of resilience. I think we've covered everything. Just to sum up, we need to respond, recover, and renew. Think out of box always. I think this is one thing that we need to learn. Most of us have a tunnel view. We don't want to get out of our comfort zone. We always want to think within those parameters, and we need to think sometimes out of the box and think what we can do other than different than what the others are doing. Take some risks. There's something known as calculated risks and something known as stupid risks. So we need to take, a leader needs to take a risk. In army, of course, we take a lot of risks. I tell you very frankly, because we will always encounter a stage where we've not planned for that. You keep planning for 10, 20, 30 things, but ultimately something will happen where you have to take a decision, you have to take a calculated risk. So you have to take, and our risks are basically connected with lives, but still we have to take that. Keep plan for all the contingencies, whether at home, whether you are a homemaker or you go to office, you need to be very, very clear what contingencies can arise. Building myriad leadership at all levels, we need leaders in abundance. We need leaders in every turn that we take to lead us to a proper place. So we need a plethora of leaders. We need leadership in abundance. So we all who can create good leaders should create. And I'm sure by the end of this session at 4 o'clock, you would have got at least few points to make few more people leaders in coming days. Communicate effectively, keep your team and stakeholders motivated and safe. Enable leadership and organizational renewal in challenging times. Self-care always and every time. It is supposed to be of profound value. With that, I finished with my talk. If you have any doubt, any suggestion, any questions, you are most welcome to ask, please.
Let's have a big round of applause for Arunji. Let's have a big round of applause. This is a one-time thing in life, guys. It's not easy to learn from someone who has done this. And he is sharing his stories with you.
I think it was so precise and so cute that I have no questions. Seriously.
And it is so good to see real woman power. I had that picture of woman power in the army, but we see so many women coming out, and that is why Kaushik always says that's I think ethos of our Indian Leadership Academy, that the leadership starts at home, and you have maybe 2 3 people to lead to, and that is the most challenging work, to lead
The
your
best
family.
part was leader and boss. I loved it. Like, we create leaders, not
We
the
create leaders. We create leaders.
amazing. That was super.
Thank you, Brigadier Sir. I think that was an
Thank
excellent
you.
session.
Yes.
Very humbly put across for someone like who's been in the defense forces. The video was very inspiring. I mean, for a lot of us who are not very closely been with the army. I mean, my father was external affairs, so I've only met people from the army and the defense services. But that video was truly inspirational, got me to tears. And the overall presentation and everything covered in terms of leadership is just so heartwarming and very easy to relate to and understand. So thank you very much, Brigadier Sir.
Thank you. Thank you for being there.
Okay, in case we have a different kind of problem in the leadership of the hierarchy in an organization, so what should be the action or reaction of the subordinates? Because there will be confusions in taking the order, there will be confusion, different statements, contradictory instructions being given from different stages of hierarchy. So what must the subordinates do?
Understood, Divya. In army, that is why we are different. Any order, any instructions which come from hierarchy down below, has our aim in mind what we are supposed to do. When you aim, your mission is very clear. Yes, the way we need to do it could be contradictory, and those contradictions we discuss in our war room, where we call as operational room, where we create those kind of environments. We have something called as sand models. Sand model is that we create a huge picture of where we're going to fight. We make small little hills in those models, because this is a 3-dimensional model. We have maps, we have these models. So we fight it out there. Any differences that we have, we fight it out professionally. And we come to one common conclusion, that we have to achieve this, whichever way we have to. But you are right, there are always difficult people at times. So you have to handle, once my boss asked me how he was newly posted, so we were having first meeting. So he asked me, he says, how do you tackle the militants? I said, I tackle the militants when I think like them, I behave like them, and I act like a militant. Naturally, only then you will understand. So there'll be many people who would contradict to this. No, how can you do that? You cannot think of militant, you are so and so. But the point is that ultimately we come down to a common this thing. But a difficult leader can always be tackled by, I would say, a mindfulness. You just you can't change him, you change yourself. But ultimately you are the one who's going to do that. Any stupid leader would never like to harm an organization ultimately. If he wants to harm an organization, he is not a leader. Then he needs to be thrown out. But the way of doing a thing could be different. So you have to, I think, keep all those kind of things. At least we in army, we do find some stupid people. They are always there every time, but we try to manage them. We manage them, and we discuss at a particular point. Then we keep that limit of not to say in open. But leadership is a difficult. It's not all that easy. That in a corporate, I worked in a corporate sector also. Sometimes leaders they give really stupid orders which you cannot take it. Well, you take it with a smile. You do whichever way you feel is good. I think that is how when you start delegating to people, they'll become a better leaders because they are doing their job. So a person who does his job knows better. That is why I'm saying organizational structure is that everyone has gone through that level. Everyone has commanded 10 men. Even a CDS who's there today, though as an officer we are supposed to be given a platoon comprises of about 35 people, but we made to sleep in a barrack of Jawans for first few days to learn how they live. We are supposed to be given a light machine gun, a detachment of 3 people. We are made a commander of those 3 men. When you go through this kind of leadership structure, I think you cannot be stupid. A person can be stupid if he is directly appointed as a commander or a chief of army staff or something, when he's not seen the reality. When we've gone through the reality, we cannot be so stupid. Yeah, Ruchi.
Great.
I have a question, Xavier.
Yeah.
Before I move on to my question, I just want to say it's an amazing session, and I took my notes. In fact, many notes, and very encouraging. I just like to know, from corporate perspective, we nowadays see a lot of micromanaging happening, and which is obviously not very healthy. So, how would you tackle it based on military leadership?
Micromanaging, can you give a small little example so that I can tell you how to, because let's take a live example of some situation. So just if you can explain that, I'll be able to tell you exactly.
Yeah, so I'm not saying that it's only because we are working from a virtual world, so people have gone into micromanaging. Yeah. There are certain people who have this habit, because each and everybody's leadership style is different. So even when we are working in person in offices, there are people who would be, peeping in that if the team has been given this work, how are they doing? What are the steps that they're taking? And it becomes ultimately very troublesome for the team, becomes very irritating, and they're not able to cope up with that pressure. So they're not able to deliver. So
that is where the leadership model of an organization, I've seen in the corporate world also, where if suppose I'm very sure that there's to be the honors, if someone is like Ambani or someone, and he has a son who's just joining the organization, he'll be put in a with that lowest worker that they have, and then slowly they are given time to nurture themselves, know themselves. That's actually a true leadership. The problem happens when a leader starts involving himself to the petty things which the team is supposed to do. That leader doesn't want to give you liberty to see when unless you give people certain liberty, you give them to do the task independently, you will not nurture them. You will keep, and so the best thing is, I would say, if you find such kind of organization, that means that organization is not to create leaders. They're just to create the work there. I mean, just to finish their work and go home. That's all. So it is either you start teaching them, or you need to tell someone to change that. I don't find any solution, because there are people who are stupid, who are not of that type, who cannot see people growing. There are many people who would not like anyone to take their seat.
Absolutely. Basically, insecurity.
Yeah, it is basically insecurity, because they would like that they would like to say, I did this.
Absolutely.
And the moment that I think is there in someone, he is not a leader. A true leader will say, a true leader will always, if you have succeeded in something, he'll say the team has done that. And if you have failed in a thing, he says the team has failed because of me.
Completely.
Because I have not trained them, I have not taught them. So I think a person who gets into too much into micromanagement, too much, he's not a leader then. Then he's not to be called a leader. It's better to get away from that organization which believes in this micromanagement. That's what that means. They've not trained to be a leader.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
but unfortunately, the number of such people is quite large.
They are more because we don't follow the training model of leadership. That is where we try to teach people to be bosses and not the leaders. And
True.
the organization which creates more bosses and less leaders, they don't last for very long.
Very true.
The kind of leadership which we see in Facebook and Google, I think, the kind of liberty is given. That is how those, till 2005, we not heard of Facebook and Amazon and all these kind of things. In last 10 years or 15 years, imagine the kind of companies they have grown, because these are the true leaders.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I think we need to learn from great leaders, and whenever we are in an organization which is too constipated, I would say that as far as leadership is concerned, one should try to move away from them to be a better person in life.
I think, Ruchi, just to add to what Sir told, it also, see, we've all encountered leaders like this in our corporate life. It all boils down to trust.
Yeah.
Because when you don't trust a person, you constantly checking on that person whether the person has fulfilled what you want that person to fulfill. And that's the problem that's a real bone of contention in leadership, because you're dealing with multiple people, and how do you prioritize it? It all boils down to trust and honesty, where you can also have a situation where you can have a feedback mechanism where the leader also takes feedback from everyone.
He's supposed to take feedback.
He's supposed to take feedback, because everybody, it's not a popularity contest. It's about getting the work done at the end of the day and making sure it happens, and respecting everybody for that. I think that's something which I've seen is happening in 2021, because people have understood that now that you're working from home, people have realized that the leaders have realized it's not just about the employees, it's about the employees and their families. So you're actually seeing a more a different side of a lot of leaders, actually. So you'll see that happening in 2021 also, I'm guessing, because
that will happen. And these people, I think they don't understand the true definition of delegation. Delegation means when you delegate something, you delegate let that man, give that person liberty to do that the way. What will happen? He'll fail once. That is how people will learn it.
Yeah, and I think somewhere we forget that, a person who will work or who would, take risks will only fail. Somebody who just follows will only be following.
He'll never fail.
Yes. Yeah, he'll never fail. Who will only follow. And I believe what I always keep on telling myself, that a quintessential of leadership is this, that I should not go spineless anywhere. If I feel something is wrong somewhere, I must address it in a most assertive manner. Yes. And I must address it for my team, so that they have that trust that they'll do or die for me anytime if I want. So that's my take on leadership.
I think one thing which I forgot, I think, Shekhar, thank you, you reminded me. The army take care of not only the person who's in army, it takes care of the family also. And the family becomes very much part of I don't know where I missed that point, but that's one of the greatest learning from the military, that the family also becomes very much part of the organization. And whether we are in a field or wherever we are, our families are looked after the way they're supposed to be, or even more than that. And when someone achieves martyrdom, sacrifices his life, his family is looked after much more than what is there meant for them, actually. So we take care of families, and especially at this stage, I think the corporate world also needs to take care of the families of the employees, and that will put them in that psychological safety zone where they'll be at least mentally satisfied that yes, this family, we are part. Why we called Army a family and not an organization? Because we treat everyone like a part of organization, and we call it as a family because that is how we want to live. We have to, I stayed more with my men than with my wife or anyone else. So that is my first family, and this being the second one. And the relationship continues. The army man never retires, he re-attires. So I may not be able to put on my uniform, but that heart still remains the army heart. So I think
Shekhar and sir, there was this video I'd watched in one of my this coaching session I attended where Colin Powell, who was a U.S. Secretary of State as well as the Army General, when he was asked what is the essence of leadership, the first word that came out was trust. And he said, even if you're feeling cold, you should not let the people know you're cold, because it's through that trust that they will follow you into the darkest gorges, the deepest cliffs, and just so that. So Shekhar, when you said trust, that's exactly what it reminded me of. And that video till date is so fresh in my mind. And it just adds on to everything that you've also said, Brigadier Sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, trust only comes, I showed that iceberg, na? It is hidden somewhere. So that you have to follow people because you have to take care of that iceberg because it's seen by everyone. So you have to follow. But ultimately, the true value starts the moment you're going down deep into it. That is when you start building trust, respect, and all these things.
Sir, and I think trust also comes from a high level of confidence.
Yes, you will not trust a leader who's stupid, who's you don't have faith on him. He's not looking after you. Looking after doesn't mean that you keep giving them comfortable time. I mean, it's not that. You train them well, you look after them. I mean, looking after means their personal growth, their professional growth, everything you have to look after. That is how a true leadership model is created.
Like, sir, you told that setting examples are very important. Like you were walking before the van, so
I had to do that.
You can give them that boost up. That yes,
if I had not done that, there would have been a lot of damage, because we are taught that whenever you come under fire, you have to just rush from that place. So we had stopped at that killing zone. So I had no other option to do that. So the circumstances were such that I had to create an example. I knew that 99%, because they were not, it was not an observatory fire. It was just imaginary that they were firing on that place. And the chance is very 1 in 100, but well, death chance is always 1 in 100 only. So, but there was nothing else to do. One had to do at that time. But and see, it is at the crucial time that thing has to come into your mind, how you can pull these people out. So at times you have to take a little very drastic step, like I moved into the bullets first time because I knew my people had not seen live bullets. We've just been firing on the ranges and they were scared. And it took precisely 30 seconds to them to just come out of their hideouts from behind the trees and boulders, and they were just fearless. So the small action sparks
bigger results.
That's why setting examples are very important.
It's very important. For every leader, the setting example is important.
Let's clap for Arunji.
Let's clap for everyone. I think it is, people are really energetic, and that is how you like it, when you see people energetic, receiving something of what you are talking.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for that great support. I know these examples, these things which you have learned will allow you to do a lot of introspection. Somewhere you will feel I am doing wrong. Somewhere you feel your leader is doing wrong, right? And this will also allow you to change from a perspective where you can have a mutual trust in place.